right, guys, welcome to another episode of Seize the Moment podcast. So today is an extremely special day because we have on one of my favorite musicians of all time, rap legend. So member of Tupac Shakur's Outlawz and multi-platinum selling artist, E.D.I Mean. Today we're going to be talking to E.D. about his new book, Street Fame. And so first of all, I want to say I love the title of the book, man. I love the song with Pac and obviously Nutso. And then also I really want to say before we begin talking about the book, I want to say to all of the kind of listeners out there who don't know, so Alan and I actually started off on the O4L online network. So our podcast, when it originally shot up in 2019, we started off with Vegas Media Designs with Edi and the O4L. Shout out to him. And Edi, man, I want to say thank you so much for having you on for having us on your network, man. It was such a fucking honor for us. And so for me, who grew up listening to you, and you might have not known this, I still listen to the Still I Rise album almost every day of my life, man. Almost all of the songs. And so for us, it was such an honor to be a part of O4L, man. Like such a blessing.
Yeah, man, you guys have always done a great job. It's a pleasure to have you, affiliated. I see what you guys are doing. You're taking it and taking it to, newer heights, and that's what it's about. You know what I mean? That's all I ever wanted to do. I just wanted to take the gift Tupac gave me and do the best that I can with it, and affect as many lives and change as many lives as possible, because that's what he did for me.
Yeah, man. And obviously, thank you so much for paying it forward. And so, okay, all right, now going into the book. So I'm going to read a passage from Edi's book, and then we'll start talking about it. All right, so Edi wrote, I've been in the studio for a few days, and this is going to be harder than I thought. The songs don't sound believable to me. How am I going to get King or anybody for that matter to sign me? That's the thing about hip hop that separates it from some other genres of music. People have to buy what you're selling, believe in you and your message. If they don't, you can start looking for work elsewhere. Whether you're a backpacker, gangster, or player, the buyers have to believe it. They have to want to be you or as close to whom you put in front of them as possible. The music must reflect that. All the rappers I looked up to growing up had big personas, and it was as if you knew them because or through their songs. I could listen to Ice Cube, and even though I never stepped foot in South Central LA, and I knew that I could survive there. The same with, let's say, KRS-One. The South Bronx was now my home because of the way he repped it on wax. So that's so dope, man. It seems like for you, this book, going back to it, Street Fame, so it seems like it's a love letter to hip hop. And so I know that you're from Brooklyn, man. So can you tell us a little bit about your background, your upbringing, how you fell in love with hip hop, and why it meant so much to you?
Yeah, man. I was born in the Bronx. We left the Bronx. My mother and my brother and I left the Bronx when I was 2 years old. My mother was leaving an abusive relationship that she was having with my father, who was an addict at the time. And so she tried to get as far away from him and I guess the Bronx as possible. And we landed in Coney Island, which is like right on the edge of Brooklyn. You know what I mean? Right across the street. I lived across the street from the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
And hip hop was everywhere. You know what I mean? Like I was literally born right when hip hop was being born. And as I grew, it continued to grow.
Yeah. And so
I'm gonna be 50 this summer, and hip hop turned 50 last summer.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know if you do. So we're actually not far away from Coney Island. We're like two or three train stops away. Yeah, we're from South Brooklyn.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So when guests come on and they're like, hey, where are you guys located? We're like, oh, Coney Island. Because like nobody knows this area, like the intimacies, the intricacies.
Fuck out of here.
Yeah, bro. We're not that far away from Coney Island.
Nice. Yeah. So then you already know, man. You know what Coney Island is like. And
that's right.
And that's where my love of hip hop literally was born, right there.
Yeah. So can you tell us how you discovered it, man? So who were some of your favorite artists coming up?
Man, I discovered it because I had an uncle, man, my uncle who's still living to this day, who actually inspired the book, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But he had this brown Cadillac, man, and he used to ride up and down the street in Coney Island, and he was well known in Coney Island, and he would play this record that just sounded like nothing I ever heard before. And it was a record called Sucker MCs by Run DMC. You know what I mean? And also my mother, because at the time she was still relatively young, she used to go out to discotheques and parties, and that's where hip hop was born as well. And she used to bring these records home. So it was kind of coming at me from a lot of different ways, but mainly in the street. You know, people walking down the block with the big boom boxes, the radios, you know, blasting hip hop. You know what I mean? Hip hop was literally in the streets, and then when I would go home, it was in my home as well. And so artists like, of course, Run DMC, all the early greats, Grandmaster Flash and Furious Five, you know, all of those great early groups is what I was starting to hear as a young kid in New York City.
Yeah. Yeah. And in thinking about them when you were writing this book, did you want that to be somewhat of a love letter to them, to say like, hey man, this is me paying homage to you guys?
Yeah, it's a love letter, but more of a cautionary tale.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to I wanted to give a wake up call to
Mm.
hip hop and whoever will read this book, to kind of start playing with the idea that hip hop is so big, you know, everybody smiling ain't happy for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you, man. And then so going into the story, I mean, obviously there's so much treachery involved, but then on top of that, I mean, there is a sort of love. So let's actually get into some of the characters. So can you tell us about their development, who they are, and how the story progresses?
Yeah, well, of course, the main character, he loves hip hop. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? He absolutely loves hip hop and wanted to be a hip hop artist. You know what I mean? And you know, life took him somewhere else.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because he's a bit of a square as well.
Yeah.
And so you have this duality in this character, and something that was in him that he suppressed because he wanted to go this route was awakened when he got this assignment. You know what I mean? And that's in all of us. You know what I mean? We all have a dark side that we suppress every day
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, we have to function out here in the world, and, you know, we don't want to go to jail, and we don't want to lose our families and our jobs and shit. So we keep everything in order. And he's very focused, driven, wants to keep everything in order. But sometimes when you suppress, you can suppress, but you can't deny.
Yeah.
And
That's
it
right.
was gonna the music industry absolutely exposed that, and it would have exposed that in anybody. You know what I mean? The music industry is the worst kind of drug. You know what I mean? Because once you become successful, you rarely hear no, or you rarely get reprimanded for bad behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like you kind of feed off of your own ego. I know. So Alan Book talks about that a lot. You know, kind of how the ego, or how you're kind of shaped by the ego in terms of how you move around in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, ego is not who you really are, right? Like, it could be like idea who you have of who you are in your head, how other people perceive you, stuff like that. But when you actually think that that's who you are, you're going off like all these, like people telling you who you are, and then you're acting like that's who you are instead of like who are you really, like outside of that, outside of like these thoughts you're having. And actually,
Mhm.
one thing I wanted to ask you, so with there being a lot of people who are like yes men around you, right? And you rarely hear no, like you were saying. Does that affect creativity at all? Because like before, you're trying when you're coming up, you're trying to get people to uh, hear your music. You're trying to like kind of it's not like prove yourself, but it's kind of like there's like more of a struggle that's going on there, and then that really a lot of really great things come out of that, like a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
But when people keep telling you yes all the time, oh, this sounds amazing, they can't tell you no. Did that ever, like, was that ever a problem for you?
Not really for us, because for one, we had such a high bar above us to, you know, kind of compare our music to.
Yep.
You
Mm,
know what I mean? And
that
although
makes sense.
we didn't visit that bar frequently, you know, we knew it was there. We knew what, you know, it kind of humbles you. You know what I
Mm,
mean? When you have that, you know what I mean? Now, when you're the bar, that's different. You know what I mean? When you're the bar, that's different. You have to be your own, you know what I mean? You have to be able to critique yourself and be very self-aware and be able to step out of yourself. And most people can't do that. You know what I mean? And I can't blame them. I don't know if you can, but I can't blame people for that's very difficult to do,
yeah,
to
Mm-hmm.
separate ego from self.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's when you start in the journey into self-mastery. And that's what we should all be trying to achieve. You know, harness the ego. because the ego is not bad. It's just about knowing when to turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so in the book, going into the ego and going into the main character, so how do you feel as though self-mastery applies here? So because he starts out as a cop and then he becomes a rapper, and then he thinks, well, I actually was a rapper and I was really good at this, but then I had to give it up to give up something else. And then as he kind of goes along and he learns to rap and he becomes better and better and better, he's also dealing with a lot of yes men and people who are kind of, trying to, you have this character initially who's let's say a little bit of a kind of a business mogul, right? This dude King, right? So he kind of feeds him, he tells him how great he is, and then but in some ways he's still trying to craft his creativity, right? So the question is, how does self-mastery, or in your mind, how does self-mastery apply here? How does the character develop into something of a bit more of a full-blown, not just a full-blown person, but a full-blown creative person?
Well, that's a part of his journey, and so along the journey to self mastery, you're going to be tested.
Yeah.
You're going to be tested all the time, and he's being tested in ways that he's not even realizing. You know what I mean? Because he still thinks he's still on the job. You know what I mean? But the tests are coming, and they begin to come one after another, and so this is a part of his journey. And when you read the book, when you get to the end, you'll see what kind of journey it was for him. You know what I mean? And where he may or may not go later on in life. Who knows? Maybe this journey is something that redefines him and teaches him valuable lessons, and he learns from mistakes that he never makes again. Or maybe there's more lessons to be learned for him. You know what I mean? But I don't know where you're at in the book, but as far as the
Halfway
book
through.
is, he's not self-mastery is he's failing. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's failing at every test that's thrown at him.
Yeah, and I like the contrast that you have between him and Stanley, where Stanley is this other undercover officer, but you kind of see that he gets taken in by the dark side. So for him, he kind of falls in love with it in a way. So obviously, I don't know exactly where the story's going yet, but you can kind of already see it that he's going to find a way where he's going to have a moral conflict at some point. You can already see it coming. But where with Stanley, you could kind of see that he's already fed into it and he's already been corrupted if he already wasn't corrupt to begin with. So is that what you were trying to show? That, like, listen, when you have this sort of moral dilemma, this what we call an existential fork in the road, it's that some people choose this road and they kind of go about that righteous, or go on the righteous road or the righteous side, and then you have these other people who just, I mean, become corruptible.
Yeah, I mean, really, there's corruption on both sides of the fence. You know what I mean? And that's just the nature of man. A dollar will corrupt.
Yeah.
Power corrupts.
Yeah.
And so you put that into the mix, and you have, a very unhealthy gumbo of shit to deal with. And so people, in life and in this story as well, we're all given choices.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's it. That's what we have. And our gift that makes us superior, so to speak, as human species is that we have the ability to reason. So you have choices and you have the ability to reason. Everything else, you know what I mean? And so it's up to you. It's up to these characters to make these choices, whether it's right or wrong, whether you believe in right or wrong. Stanley is one of those people that doesn't necessarily believe in right or wrong. He's just like, I'm in a snake pit, so I might as well throw on my snakeskin coat, get to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The main character, Darren, is he kind of still is optimistic and believes in, and wants to do right. You know what I mean? And loves hip hop so much, he wants to help clean it up. But in the process of cleaning it up, he gets very dirty.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and then so now kind of mapping this onto your life and your career. So let's say for us, right? So we're regular dudes, man. So most of the people listening to this are also regular people. They've never experienced what the music industry is like. I mean, all of us can either guess or we can kind of learn from you guys. So can you tell us a bit about what it was like for you coming up in it? Some of the things, some of the temptations that you had to deal with, some of the ways that, let's say, I don't know, you felt like you might have been or even were corrupted.
Oh, and also, if like, did you sometimes feel like the Darren character? Did you experience people who were like the Stanley character?
Yeah.
That too.
No, I've never met anybody like the main character. Maybe I've been around these individuals and just didn't know it. Who knows?
Hmm.
But as far as Stanley, I think we all have Stanleys in our life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I think we all have people that just are kind of, you know, pragmatic in the sense that, hey, this is life is shitty, so I might as well be as shitty as life or be
Hmm.
shittier to survive
No.
out here. You know what I mean? Like this is what it is, and I'm gonna just go with it. And so I think we all kind of can identify with the Stanley character. As far as my personal story, hey man, this is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know what I mean? And so whatever you can imagine, I've seen or experienced firsthand.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, because you guys obviously came up with Tupac, and he, from at least from what Mood told us many times when he was on the show, he said that Pac tried to actually protect you guys from fame, that he really didn't want that. Did you experience that too?
Yeah, he did the best he could.
Yeah.
He did the best he could, you know what I mean? And that's very honorable of him. That's very big brother like of him, which he was. But at the end of the day, we're human beings. We all had choices, and we didn't always make the best choices.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit, a little bit about some of the guidance that he gave you and what he saw with you guys, or where you guys were going that he wanted to help?
Um, you know, Pac really, for me personally, Pac led by example. He was the type to say, look, you want to do this, watch and pay attention.
Hmm.
And I did. I paid attention the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And was there anything in particular that he wanted to keep you guys away from? Especially, I mean, some of the people who have more power or things like that.
I don't know because on one end he wanted to keep us away from certain things, and then on the other end, he literally and figuratively would drive us.
Mm,
You know what I mean? And you know, we were kind of all on the same page as far as being young and impulsive and you know not really healed from things that we all went through in childhood.
Mm.
I mean, so you kind of have these individuals that are given this amazing opportunity to do something that they love and change their life and change their family lives, but are completely, you know, in the trenches of trauma
yeah.
and trying to figure it out. And you can hear because we talk about it in the music. It's not like we put like we weren't the kind of rappers that gave you a nice shiny, you know what I'm saying, product to pick up.
Mm.
You know what I mean? We gave you the flaws and everything. You know what I mean? We told you like, yo, we fucked up, shit is fucked up, but we trying to figure it out. We want better. We want better for ourselves. We want better for our community. But at the same time, this is what it is.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And speaking of trauma, I mean, in your minds, I mean, maybe this has an obvious answer, but I still want to know what your opinion would be. So, in dealing with trauma, why did you think, at least at the time, that the music industry, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, why did you think in some ways that that would be healing?
We didn't.
Mm,
We didn't. We didn't even know what healing was about.
yeah.
Mm.
We didn't even know you could heal.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there was no concept of that. You know, mental health was not as popular as it is now,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, is there a part of you that still would go back to
especially
that
in the
time?
hip hop community. Especially
Oh,
in the hip hop.
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is there a part of you that would still go back to that, man? Because I mean, in some of your songs, especially "Our Life" on the old school Outlaw album, you talk about what it was like with you talk with the Jaguars, the women that you were with. Like, is there still a part of you that wish you had that lifestyle, or do you feel like you've at this point moved on from it?
Who's to say I don't?
I hear you. I mean, because you have a family now, so.
Like I said,
I love that.
who's to say I don't? I live a fucking fabulous life, man. But
Yeah.
what I've learned as an adult
Mhm.
Yeah.
that there's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's certain things that I'm gonna do every day of my life. There's certain things that I stick to, and there's certain rules that I follow no matter what, and I don't break them for any reason
Mhm.
at all. And I kind of let that guide me. But at the same time, I'm a human being, and I love life to the fullest, and I love all the flavors and textures and experiences. I want to have as many as I can on this ride because we only get one.
Yeah.
That's true. Plus, if
Yeah,
you
so
check it out, oh yes,
it's not. It may not be as wild as it was, of course. You know what I mean? Like it's not as wild as it was,
Yeah.
not at all. You know what I mean? But life is still very good. That's why I named one of my last projects La Bella Vida.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I'm giving you music in real time. That's really my life that I'm living right now.
Yeah.
yeah. Plus, honestly, even from the new song "Money and the Power,"
Hmm.
like yeah, you get that vibe. Like it's still, it's still good. Everything's like,
Hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
then so Edie, you said, man, that you haven't really experienced a character like Darren in real life. But would you say that you modeled yourself, or actually you modeled any of the characters on yourself or any of the Outlaws in any way?
Not at all.
Okay.
This story is completely it's fiction based in reality
Hmm.
because everything in the book really does happen and really has happened and really can happen.
Mm,
But as far as the Outlaws or Tupac or any of that, it has nothing, you know what I mean? Some things I've seen on my journey, of course. You know what I mean? How else would I be able to, talk about it? You know what I mean? And the number
Hmm.
one thing as a writer is to write what you know. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I know hip hop and I know the hip hop industry. I've lived it since I was 17 years old.
Hmm.
mm. What caused that shift for you from music to writing? Like, what is it that like pulled you towards writing?
It really wasn't a shift. I was always a writer. I always
Right.
excelled at writing when I was in school. That was my favorite subject.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I would have been a writer and I can still consider myself a writer, even though I'm a musician.
Mhm.
Um, Writing is something I've always done. You know what I
Mm,
mean? From the time I was a kid, from poetry to journaling to writing these stories, to writing raps, to eventually writing songs.
mm.
Always been a writer.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not really a shift for me. The book was going to happen. Some type of book was going to happen sooner or later.
Oh, gotcha.
No, I gotcha. Yeah, and I can't imagine, man. Like, so for somebody like you, who was obviously at the time in the mid '90s, actually in the early '90s, thinking about it, that you were super young, and then you have this person who's already a legendary figure in Tupac, reading your poetry and your rhymes, and thinking like, damn, yo, you are super fucking talented. So, what was that like for you when Pac actually discovered your work and gave you feedback on it the first time?
It was all the validation I needed
Mm-hmm.
to do something that I already knew I was going to do
Mm-hmm.
because I loved hip hop so much and I loved writing and creating so much. I was going to do this whether a Tupac existed or not. This was going to be something that I did. I knew at a very early age this is what I wanted to do and would literally have dreams about it. I would wake up dreaming, you know what I mean? Like true story. I would dream that I met Marley Marl, you know what I mean, on the train and rap for him and he put me in the Juice Crew.
Mm-hmm.
Literally used to
Damn.
have this dream and I had it more than once.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was something that I was going to do regardless. So when Pac said, yo, you got talent, all you got to do is graduate high school and you could come to Oakland and, let's do it. That was all I needed.
Mm,
That
Yeah,
was it.
that's dope, man.
I
And then,
always thought I already thought he was, an amazing rapper.
mm.
yeah.
So for an amazing rapper to tell you dope, that's all you need.
Yeah, man. And that's going to be my next question. So, in terms of your perspective now, why did you value Pac so much before you even knew him? What about his rhymes, or what about, like, let's say your favorite songs of his drew you to him?
Well, my journey with Tupac kind of goes before we were even in the music industry, before he
Mm.
was in the music industry. He just when I finally began to hear his music, it was a different voice.
Mhm.
It was a different tone. The texture of his voice was different. And even when we were kids, I think how your voice changed when you're going through puberty.
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm.
Pac's voice kind of never did that. He kind of had that voice, you know what I mean, his whole life.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And so when you hear it on beats and you hear it on hip hop and like just to know that he was on the same page that I was on and loving hip hop and wanting to contribute to it was you know, amazing for me. You know what I mean? Because I really didn't have any other family members that were really like into being the artists. We all loved hip hop, but there was no other person in the family at that point that was really trying to pursue it as a lifestyle and a career. So it was just, you know, great to know that somebody I've known most of my life was into hip hop, and you know, he was actually dope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when he started, he wasn't as good as he was gonna be.
Yeah. I mean, did you guys see that though? In thinking of just the group together, the Outlaws, like not even just Pac singularly, because I think that was a little bit more obvious. But when you guys started Dramacidal, was there a thought of like, hey, this is where this could go?
All we had was him. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like all we had to gauge was really him, because that's the only person we knew that actually got a record deal, made it into the music industry, even did a movie,
Hmm.
and had an actual career in this business. And so whatever he did, let us know we could do.
Hmm.
You know
Yeah.
what I
So,
mean?
I
As
mean,
far
essentially,
as, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So essentially, like, yeah, he inspired you guys. And again, he inspired you with the confidence to know that you guys can be a part of the group. So, yeah, when he created Dramacidal and again, what became the Outlaws, did he have a particular vision for it at the time, like more long term, or was it more like, hey, let's put this together and see where it goes?
There was a couple of different visions, you know what I mean? And everything I can't get into detail, because obviously we have some projects coming that, you know what I
Yep.
mean, we got to save stuff for.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But you know, that Dramacidal was one vision. There was several different visions that led up to the Outlaws, and the Outlaws being the thing that stuck.
Hmm.
Dramacidal was just one of them.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. And why did you guys end up changing the name to the Outlaws?
That's a famous story, a
Mm.
famous Hussein Fatal story.
Hmm.
As you know, we were the Young Thugs, we were Dramacidal, we were, you know what I mean, a lot of
Yep.
different things. And, you know, the Outlaws just made the most sense. And you know, rest in peace to Hussein Fatal. He was the one to be able to identify that.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about that? How did that happen?
I don't want to go into detail about that. I gotta save that. I gotta
Oh,
save that story.
all right, I got you, man. Yeah, and then so with the okay, so then with all the people, with all the Outlaws, right? So we had Big Psych, we had Hussein Fatal, Young Noble. So how was all of that put together? How did Pac end up finding all you guys?
As far as you know, Tupac and Sykes' relationship and how they met, um, because I wasn't there personally, I don't want to go into that because I might say something that's incorrect.
Hmm.
I just heard stories about how they met.
Yep.
And so I'm going to leave that alone. As far as the Outlaws is concerned, the Outlaws kind of all knew each other at different stages of our lives, and was around each other at different stages of our lives before music came into the play. And the common denominator was Yafeo Gaddafi Fuller and Tupac Shakur.
Hmm.
Those are the two common denominators. And we all have a connection to those two individuals.
No, I got you, man.
That's how the group came together. You know, of course, you've heard the story. Pac was in jail. He went to put together a super group. You know what I mean? And you know, asking you shall receive it. You
Hmm.
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you know, you get the group, and you get the group, and you know, you get everything else that comes along with it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, is there a part of you that still thinks about what it would have been like had he started Machiavelli Records and you guys been his first artists?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mm.
You know, I kind of you know, I don't like to stay in the past too much, but fucking amazing. You know what I mean? The shit that we were embarking on, and the shit that we were working on, and where we could have took it, sky's the limit.
Yeah, I got you, man.
And how do you feel about the cultural impact of hip hop today, versus when you started?
Oh man, it's you know, it's hard to, you know, put it into words and not give it enough, give it enough that it
Hmm.
deserves. You know, hip hop has changed so many lives, and present company included. It is a cultural phenomenon that came up literally out of the streets, and it literally is the idea of taking nothing and turn it into something. And how American is that? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I just can't, I can't express enough love for hip hop. The industry that comes along with it, not a fan of that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but that's the music business. And so if you don't want to be in the music business and you have to deal with the shit that goes on in music business, you might as well not be in this business, And for everybody that, has complaints about the music business or anything in life in general, I just say be the change you want to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're gonna be in the industry, be different, be honorable, be stand up, and one by one we can change the bullshit.
Yeah, man. And then so for you in writing this book, going back to it, so why was it important for you to write this cautionary tale? Because I'm assuming it's geared toward not necessarily only young rappers, but I'm assuming mostly young rappers. And so why was it important for you to let them know this?
Well, it kind of started from a conversation I was having with my uncle, and you know, going back a little bit further as far as things that mirror each other, as far as in the Black Panther movement,
Mhm.
the hip hop movement,
Hmm.
and how revolutionary each time is, and how life changing each time is, and the radicalness of it, and how some people can perceive that as a threat,
Hmm.
and the lengths they will go to stifle um, certain artists, certain movements, the movement itself.
Mhm.
And so we were having this conversation, and comparing the parallels in it. And he had made a comment that if he could write a movie about it, he would. You know what I mean? And just to give people an insight of what could be going on and what probably is going on within the music industry. And this is 10 years ago. Of course, now we know what happened. We have examples, rappers like Takashi 69 and
Yeah.
the whole YSL situation and Gunna's situation and different artists, that have run into some bullshit with the law. And we see what happens when, the government comes down and they talk about, look, you're gonna owe us some time. We need
Hmm.
some information. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So this is a fictionary tale. It's a little extreme, but absolutely, who's to say it couldn't happen? You know what I mean? Who's to say it's not happening and has it already happened? And so that was one of the reasons why um I wanted to write the book. Yeah, it's a cautionary tale, and it's hopefully it gets people to reading. You know what I mean? And because that's important. You know what I mean? I feel like we're on our phones and shit so much that we forget about the beauty of just reading sometimes, reading a novel and just getting information out of a book.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Uh, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, actually, being as a cautionary tale, right? I mean, what kind of advice would you maybe have for young artists trying to make their way up in the industry the way it is today?
Make mistakes,
Mm.
Yeah.
and hopefully you survive the mistakes.
Mm.
I mean, because through mistakes, that's how you learn. It's the only way you're gonna learn.
Yeah.
So get in it, do your best. You know what I'm saying? Have love for it. Get your money, but have some love in it somewhere in it, and yeah, just make a lot of mistakes.
I love that. So I want to read another passage from your book and talk about it. All right. So in the book, Edie wrote, can compete with Rico Real. Many felt this was a veil for more than for a more sinister plan. He wanted Rico dead, but he knew all eyes were on this feud. Besides, Rico beefed up his security. Rumors swirled that he had an off-duty police officer on the payroll.
Mm.
Killing Rico now would mean an easy conviction for police and prosecutors, major jail time for anybody involved. King and Lil G tried to resolve their issues, but to no avail. It seemed Lil G, once dubbed Baby King, had grown up a bit and had been doing his homework. He caught King in merciless records and numerous infractions. He was looking to get out of his contract and did a major interview with a hip hop magazine stating, I thought these people were my family, but there's no such thing in this business. The only laws are greed and treachery. I'm no longer Baby King or Lil G. I realized these names literally put me below, under the next man. Now I'm a grown ass man. Fuck that. My new name is Illuminati because I'm enlightened and I now see the light, and that light I will use to expose the snakes in this game.
Mm.
He also vowed to no longer disrespect women in his music, rap about drugs or violence, or even go at his arch enemy Rico Real anymore. Not only had this dude grown up, but he obviously had been reading a lot of books and did some major soul searching. Some suspect that he converted to Islam, but he never verified those assumptions either way. So Edie, so when I was reading this, man, I thought of Rakim. So the famous story for anybody who knows a little bit about Rakim's life is that with Dr. Dre, when he was coming in, when he was going to be an artist on Aftermath, he was an artist on Aftermath. So Rakim does conscious music. He doesn't do street stuff. There's this really great story where Dr. Dre's like, listen, man, we need you to do street music. Like this is kind of what we're about. Rakim thought about it. He's like, I don't really want to do it anymore. I have other things that I like, right? So he's like, this doesn't feel authentic to me. So when you're in the industry, do you find that a lot of times what you're talking about in that passage with people who care, who want to uplift the community, who write songs like Keep Your Head Up, do you find that in the music industry, a lot of times there's a lot of pushback against that, and that you do get a situation like with Rakim where he says something like, hey man, I want to uplift people. I want to make sure that people have self-esteem. I want to make sure that they feel good about themselves and what they're able to do and what they can contribute. I don't want to rap about stuff that degrades them. Do you find that a lot of times there is in the music industry a lot of pushback against that?
This is entertainment. And so we can't forget that. A lot of times, I think one of the things that made Tupac such a great artist is that he had the ability to give you both.
Mm.
Not every artist can do that. And so some artists are going to pick a side and they're going to stay on that side. You know what I mean? And more power to them.
Mm-hmm.
The pushback is whether your shit sells or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so you have maybe you have situations where labels will promote another artist more than they have these two artists on a label. One artist is about what he's about, the other is about what he's about. They're on both sides of the spectrum. Maybe one artist may get more marketing dollars and promotion than the other artist.
Mm.
I could see that happening. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, this is music business. This is retail. It's about what's selling, what sells, and what doesn't sell. And that's really what it's about. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day. Now, if you're a conscious rapper and you move a lot of units, you're gonna get the promotion from the label. You're gonna get you're not gonna get pushback because you sell records. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If you don't sell records in the music industry that is based on selling records, then you're gonna get pushback. You're gonna get, people that don't want to do business with you because this shit is about making money. Yeah. You know what I mean? And there's a famous quote that 50 Cent said, if that's how you feel about it, just keep that shit in your house. Mm-hmm. Don't play it for nobody else. Just make it for you. Mm-hmm. But once you decide to sell it, it has to be something people are gonna want to buy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man.
I can see.
You got to figure out how to stay true to yourself amongst all of that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which is a full-time job in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I could see how like people in sales, they hear, oh, this song's about sex and money. The song, some conscious something, uplifting. And maybe just like even before they start to sell it, they're like, nah, obviously, we're gonna go for the sex and money song, right? I know it does never work like that in reverse. Like it's not like, let's say it's before the sales happen. Like, do they make decisions like that? They're like, nah, this is about like uplifting yourself. This one's more about like raw, like sex, crime, like gritty stuff. And then it even stops somebody who's like more of a conscious rapper from even being how should I put it, like put out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, I'm sure that's probably happened in the music industry. Fortunately for us, we've never had to experience that. We were, kind of independent. Even the kind of artist Tupac was, he was signed to a label, but he was independent in his thinking and how he wanted to make his music, and the vision was completely, his. And so when you're self-designed and you don't have an A&R person giving you your image and picking your songs and picking the producers you're gonna work with. You don't have that. When you're an artist that a label has signed and invested a bunch of money into, they kind of, have the right to have some say-so in their investment.
That's
You're
right.
foolish to think that you're going to be in the music industry with a record deal where people have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into you, and they just going to sit there and let you do what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Mhm.
Unless you're the kind of artist whose material and whose vision is strong enough that they could say, yo, we don't really need to do much. Like a Prince. Prince was 19 years old when he got his record deal. They wanted to pair him up with this producer and that producer. But because his vision was that strong and his belief in himself that strong and his material that strong, he was able to write, produce, and play all the fucking instruments on his first album for a label like, I think, Warner Brothers. You know what I mean? That's type of shit is unheard of. Stevie Wonder didn't even get a chance to do that. You know what I mean? Stevie Wonder had 6, 7 albums before he was able to write and produce his own music on his own. Prince did that at 19 years old. So you could be that kind of artist, but those artists are rare. You know what I mean? From Biggie to Snoop to you name it, they all had somebody helping them. You know what I mean? Tupac is one of the few artists that literally was self-designed, from his music to his image to everything that you saw about him. I never saw an A&R person ever tell Pac what to do or what kind of song to record. And so we never had that experience as well.
Yeah, wow.
Unless it was him saying, look, you guys need, as a teacher, you know what I mean? But other than that, we never had anybody, you know what I mean? Death Row didn't like our album because we did our first album, Retribution. They didn't like it because we did what we wanted to do. You know what I mean? They wanted us to do something else. And, we categorically refused to do anything what we wanted to do.
Oh man, can you get into that? Like the specifics of that? Like what didn't they like about it?
I mean, in their defense, there wasn't like any records that were commercially viable to be played on radio at all.
Yeah.
We didn't give, we were a hardcore rap group.
Right.
That's it. You know what I mean? And our music reflect that. So I'm not knocking Death Row for not liking our album. I get it. They a fucking record company. They want to sell records. And obviously we're Tupac's group. You know what I'm saying? And so they kind of expecting to hear something at least similar to that. Or, you know what I mean? But that's not what we did.
Yeah, man. And then so going back into the extremes and sort of, or I guess the different worldviews or the musical perspectives. So how do you think, I mean, if you had any insight into this, how do you think Pac was able to merge these two different worlds between what's expected from the music industry and maybe to some extent what he wanted to write about, but then also sort of the more conscious version, the Keep Your Head Up, the Baby Don't Cry, these songs that were more uplifting. How was he able to merge these two seemingly extreme worlds together?
No, man, bad motherfucker, ain't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like bad motherfucker, man, because it's like, as an artist myself, I'm still trying to crack that code. You know what I mean? And I think I'm not alone in that. You know what I mean? There's very few artists that can do that. That's it. I think you could count them on one hand. You know what I mean? And as far as hip hop concerned, he's like one of one to do it on such a high level. You know what I mean? In my opinion, if you could find somebody else, let me know. You know what I mean? I think his range is what separates him from other artists. The ability to do a Keep Your Head Up and a Hit 'Em Up. How do you want it? Mama's Just a Little Girl. Just all these different songs and different concepts. It's just very few artists that can do it, man, in any genre of music.
Yeah, and then so from the things that he talked to you about, why was it important for him to have that side of himself, that he didn't just want to be whatever the mainstream was, or he didn't want to just fit in with that? Why did he want to do a Keep Your Head Up, which at the time was revolutionary? There were no rappers doing things like that.
We never talked about shit like that. You know what I mean? That's just who he was.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about shit like that. And if you knew Tupac, you were not surprised at the music he made. You know what I mean? The music he made was really a direct reflection of who he was. But if you didn't know Tupac, you're like, who's this artist that's doing these type of songs that nobody in hip hop is doing at least at that time. You're like,
Mm.
what is this?
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you, man. And so before you mentioned the rules that you live by, and so whatever gets you through in the music industry, whatever gets you through the life. So can you tell us a little bit about them? Like, what is your moral code?
My moral code,
Yeah, man. What are the rules? What's important?
the, the rules is, you know, this is life. And
Mm.
so kind of want to make it to the finish line in one piece. You know what I mean? And you want to go around the board as many times as possible and, you know, collect 200,
Mhm.
go around
Yeah.
and do as
Mhm.
much as you can. You know what I mean? And like, you know, as far as my moral code, I just believe in, you know, I won't fuck you over if you won't fuck me over. You know what I mean? And like, it's all love. I love living. And
Mhm.
so I just hope the people I come in contact with and that I deal with love life as much as I do. And then we'll be all right.
Mhm. Yeah, man, I love that. And then I also want to touch on the mental health aspect since we talked about it a little bit, and I wanted to ask you a question about it. So you said before that you really didn't know what trauma was, how to deal with it, and you just entered the music industry. I'm assuming just thinking, hey, man, this shit is really fun. So now when you have this new perspective of it, like, you know, how you mentioned before that, you know, trauma, mental health is now it's now a concept for people in the Black community. So how do you see it now? What does healing mean to you now?
Healing is me going and hiking a fucking mountain
Mm-hmm.
at 8 o'clock in the morning when it's freezing outside, and you know what I mean. And you know that's healing. I think we all got to find different ways to do it. Some people therapy, you know what I mean. I'm not knocking therapy or going to talk to a therapist. So you know what I mean. Or some people it's the gym. You know what I
Mhm.
mean. Some people is writing, journaling. You know, you just got to find different ways to heal yourself in life because one thing's for sure, you're gonna experience traumatic events in life. It's shit's gonna go fucking wrong. Life is crazy. You know, the world is crazy. Life is very fragile. You know what I mean? Human life is very fragile, and the fact that we've continued to endure for you know so many hundreds of thousands of years and we're still here evolving is amazing because life is very fragile. You could be out of here just like that.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so, with that being said, you got to find different ways to just make this journey a enjoyable one. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That's really what it's all about. Like that's the if you want to know the secret to life, the key to life is just to like enjoy the ride and gratitude and being grateful that you get another day because somebody's not waking up today.
I
Mm.
got you, man. And then, so when you look, I know you got these projects coming up, which I also want to ask you about in a minute. But in terms of the Outlaws, but what do you want people to think about and remember when they think of the Outlaws? Essentially, what do you want the Outlaws' legacy to be?
Well, that's a twofold question because at the end of the day, what people perceive you and how people perceive us is completely out of our control.
Hmm.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? What we do as men and as human beings and as individuals and then as artists is gonna our legacy is more as far as the families we raise and you know how they turn out because we're fathers, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's the legacy. The music shit is whatever, you know what I mean? People could think like, oh, the Outlaws were fucking trash, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And you get enough people to think that, then you know what I mean? There it is, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, you know, all we ever did was do our best, you know what I mean? And to make it through a very, very unique situation. I think the Outlaw story is probably one of the more unique stories in hip hop history. I think it's a story that needs to be told. That's another there's so many jewels in that story and so many things that people can learn from our story. And so that's the main reason I want to have our story told. But you know, like I said, legacy is the real shit.
Hmm.
The,
Mm.
the the ones that have our last names and that look like us and you know what I mean, the opportunities that we could provide for them and you know, like you said earlier, paying it forward through the people that we created and how they contribute to society. You know what I mean? And whether they're contributing positively or they're a burden on society. You know
Mm.
what I mean? That's the legacy right there.
Wow, man, I love that. And so, all right, let's talk about the projects. What do you guys got coming up? What are in the what's in the works, and especially what's in the works related to the Outlaws?
Well, as far as Street Fame is concerned, I have a soundtrack coming out for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna drop very soon.
Damn.
All new music on it. Some solo music from myself, but I'm also passing the baton, so to speak, to some other artists that I rock with. Younger artists such as Marcellus. I've been working with a lot lately. Ed Bone, of course. Ed Bone is somebody we've been working with for over 20 years. H Rider is another artist we've been working with for over 20 years. He's on it. But then I have new artists I'm working with, like Mac Mason. We just shot a video for a record called What's the Vibe About? He's an artist that's straight out of Brooklyn, my hometown. And
Mm-hmm.
me, him, and Nobe, that's a fucking crazy track. And so the soundtrack is crazy. It's inspired by the story, Street Fame, and it's, hardcore street hip hop at its finest. You know what I mean? Shout out to Chronicle. He also has a dope song on the project as well. Actuals on the project.
Mm-hmm.
False, my partner in the recording app that I'm working on, and I'm CEO of. And so he's on there as well. So that's first coming up. Then after that, I have a EP I'm putting out for Valentine's Day with the artist Marcellus. It's kind of like a best of both worlds project in the sense that we're just mashing up hip hop and R&B and just putting it together on one project.
Hmm.
Something for the ladies, Valentine's Day. If you got a girl, if you got a romantic situation, this would be a dope project to be playing
Mm-hmm.
while you are having your relations.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like that.
And so, what about the Outlaws documentary? Any update on that?
You know, one step at a time.
Okay.
Documentaries. One thing about television and movies and all of that shit, it moves a lot slower than the music
Yeah.
industry.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Things develop a lot slower because you're talking about so much more money and so much more moving parts than music. You know what I mean? I can go in the studio for a few days straight and give you a project and have it uploaded and into the world in a couple weeks.
Yep.
Doesn't work like that with television, movies, and all of this shit. So anytime you see a movie, on average, it took 10 years to get to the point where you see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Most projects, you know what I'm saying? And so one step at a time, it's in development. And that's really that's the most I can say about it, because anything else would just be hyping people up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hype people up anymore until we have something that we can give them concrete. You know what I mean? But I will say it's in development. The story continues to develop.
Oh man, yeah, that's so awesome, dude. I've been looking forward to that, man, for years. So I'm just curious, what did you think of the Dear Mama documentary?
I'm a fan of documentaries. I love documentaries of all different subject matters and whatever. I just love documentaries. And
Mm-hmm.
so Dear Mama probably was one of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my life. And that, completely as honest as I can be, has nothing to do with the fact that I'm a part of the story. It
Mm-hmm.
was just very, very well done. You know what I mean? A masterpiece, if you will. And it deserves all the accolades and, you know, credit that it can get.
Yeah, I love that,
Really
man.
good
Yeah,
job.
I agree with that too, man. Yeah, I saw it and I was like, holy shit, dude. Not only is this one of the best documentaries of the year, I thought it was one of the best documentaries of all time.
Yeah, it really like, you know, the editing. The
Mm-hmm.
editing is phenomenal. And I met the editor. Can't remember his name right now. Forgive me, but he actually, you know, had a very spiritual connection to the project,
Mm-hmm.
if you will.
Mm.
And me and him had a conversation, and he told me some things that um, raised the fucking hair on your back
Wow.
during the making of this particular project. So
Mhm.
yeah.
I got you, man. All right. So, and then as we start to wrap up, so the last thing I want to know about is, first of all, I want to know you about what do you like about podcasting, since we do this, and I feel like that's such a big connection with us and you. And so, what do you love about podcasting, and then also, what do you got coming up with EDI Mean TV?
I think, podcasting gives people a break from music.
Mhm.
You know, so much music in the, you know, in the marketplace, and if you love music, you can be overwhelmed with the amount you have to choose from. And so podcasting is a way for people to be entertained and informed, and it not be about music. And I also, you know, the reason why podcasting has become so popular, I think for a large part of it, people have become somewhat disillusioned with hip hop in particular. You know what I mean? So people want some alternatives. They still want something from the culture, you know what I mean? But they want an alternative. And I'm speaking about hip hop podcasting specifically, but podcasting as a whole is just, you know, like I said, it's an alternative for music. You can do it while you know, you're working out. You can do it while you're working. You can listen to it in so many different ways. And the podcasts that I've myself have really appreciated are the ones that kind of stick to a particular subject. You know what I mean? Kind of the murder ones, the crime ones. That's how I got introduced to podcasts, through that. And now it's a whole nother animal. I don't really feel like what I do is podcasting as far as the Outlawz show. It's more of like a one-on-one interview that's in the setting of a podcast. But as much as I've tried to make it a podcast, that's not what it is. It's just me having a conversation with people that I'm interested in, and I'm interested in their journeys, and I want to help them share with my audience.
Oh man, yeah, I love that, dude. And like, yeah, man, just from what you guys do, just as the Outlawz, Edi, I mean, the person. I mean, dude, all of us are inspired by you. You know, your work, obviously,
100%.
with everything, like with the podcasting, dude. When we started out on the O4L Online Network, I mean, we were inspired by the dinner club that you were doing at the time. So that was
Yeah.
a dope ass show, man.
Oh
And
man, thank you, man.
yeah,
Thank
absolutely, man. And it was so cool that you guys ended up taking the dinner club and moving it to EDI Mean TV. Because I remember you guys had like a kind of like a low-key studio initially, and now you guys went all out and like the Still I Rise album on the background and everything. That's so dope, man.
Yeah, man. Unfortunately, we had to move out of that location. We'll be moving to a new location very soon, and the Outlaw Show is gonna have a new look, obviously. But you know, I appreciate that opportunity and that time to do that show. It kind of gave me a chance, because a lot of different shows started to develop, became really popular. You know what I'm saying? I literally started at the beginning of podcasting when I was doing the Real Talk Show at T Radio V out here in LA, you know, and I was the first kind of semi podcast, kind of like a radio show put together. And so I got very interested in that. And of course, growing up in New York City as a kid in the 80s, radio was so big and so popular. So I was always, you know, listening to radio. You know, I had a radio in my room. Like as a kid in the 80s, your own radio was like having your own cell phone. Actually, it's that big, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So when I first got my very first own radio and boombox, I played it all the time. I listened to the radio all the time. And so to be able to work in it as an adult was a dream come true. And then the dinner club was more like radio. Shout out to DJ Ski and Dash Radio. You know, that was a great opportunity to do that show. That was fun. And now it's the Outlaw Show. And it's kind of a little bit more just about, you know, me one-on-one interviewing somebody, 60-minute style or something like that.
yeah. Yeah, I love that, man. And we're looking forward to learning more about you, learning the stories from the people that you interview, man. Again, what you've been doing just has been so cool and so motivating to see.
Thank
Okay.
you. It's a
You
lot.
got, yeah, absolutely, man. Okay. So as we start to wrap up, Alan, final questions for Edi before we go.
Oh yeah, if we wanted to follow you and follow your work, where could we do that?
You can follow me at the real Edi Don on Twitter, and Edi Don OFL on everything else. Of course, I have EDI Mean TV, OFL Digital, OFLDigital.com. Follow the whole movement. Stay up to date with us. The Outlawz Official on Facebook. Anywhere you do your social media, we're there.
I love it, man. All right, Edi, dude, if I could tell teenage me that one day you'd be on my podcast, man, it would just be the most incredible thing, man. Been such a
Oh
fan of
man,
your
shit.
music.
If I could tell teenage me that I'll be doing interviews, You know what I mean? And talking about music and being an artist. So we're similar in that regard, man. You know what I mean?
I hear you, man. Again, Edie, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was epic. So grateful.
Thank y'all for having me, man. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely, man. We'll be
Thanks
in
for the
touch.
support for the book as well.
Yeah,
Oh, of
absolutely.
course,
Great
man.
story, man. I can't wait to finish reading it. All right, man.
Appreciate that.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, man.
All right, y'all.
So, everyone, if you'd like to follow us, you could follow us at Seize the Moment Podcast on Facebook and on Instagram. On Twitter, we're at Seize_podcast. Like, subscribe,
Hit the bell on YouTube.
And again, thank you so much for watching and see you next time.